The galaxy had many rules. Some were written in books, some were carved into the walls of ancient temples, but the most important rule was never written anywhere. It lived in the whispers of frightened soldiers. It passed from parent to child across 1,000 different worlds. Every species knew it. Every captain taught it to their crew. Every leader remembered it before making any decision about humans. The rule was simple: do not attack human children. 300 years had passed since humans first left their small blue planet and joined the stars. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were twice their size and could crush stone with their bare hands. They were not They had been building starships when humans were still living in caves. They were not the fastest or the oldest or the most advanced. But humans were something else. They were relentless. They did not forget. They did not forgive. And when someone hurt their children, they became something that made even the oldest species in the galaxy feel fear. Ambassador stood in his office on the space station called Unity Point. It floated in neutral space, far from any planet, where all the species of the Galactic Council could meet without fighting. Was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served as humanity's voice in the Council for 15 years. He had seen many things. He had negotiated peace treaties and trade agreements. He had smiled at creatures that wanted him dead and shook hands with beings that had no hands to shake. But today, his hands were shaking for a different reason. On his desk, a screen showed images that made his stomach turn. Buildings on fire, ships falling from the sky, and bodies, small bodies, children's bodies. The message had come from Nu, a human colony world on the edge of human space. It was a peaceful place. Farmers grew rice in fields that stretched to the horizon. Families lived in small towns with clean streets and good schools. The biggest building in the capital city was Academy, a school where over 2,000 children studied and played and dreamed about their futures. That building was now a pile of broken stone and twisted metal. Read the report again, hoping he had made a mistake. He had not. The Galactic Council had authorized a military strike on Nu. They called it a containment operation. They said humans were growing too powerful. They said humanity needed to be reminded of its place in the galaxy. So they had sent ships, warships flying under the Council's flag. They had bombed cities. They had destroyed farms. And they had dropped fire on a school full of children. 847 children were dead. 1,156 were wounded. Many would never walk again. Many would never see again. Many would carry scars for the rest of their lives. Closed his eyes. He remembered a story his grandfather had told him when he was young, a story about a species called the 200 years ago, there had been a proud and powerful species. They controlled 50 star systems and had a fleet of 10,000 ships. They thought humans were weak because humans smiled too much and talked about peace too often. So they had attacked a human moon and taken prisoners. Among those prisoners were 47 children. The humans had asked for the children back. They had asked nicely. They had offered money. They had offered technology. They had offered anything they wanted. They had laughed. They had sent back a message saying the children would make good slaves. That was their mistake. Within one galactic cycle, which was about 3 Earth years, that was burning. Their fleet was scattered across 100 systems, broken into pieces so small they could never be put back together. Their leaders were dead. Their cities were dust. The survivors became refugees, begging for food and shelter from species that had once feared them. The 47 children were found alive. The humans had not stopped until every single one was safe. After that day, every species in the galaxy learned the rule. You could fight humans. You could argue with them. You could compete with them in trade and politics, but you never, ever touched their children. Until now. Opened his eyes and looked at the screen again. At the bottom of the report was a name. He was the representative on the Galactic Council. He was the one who had proposed the attack. He was the one who had convinced the other council members that humans needed to be contained. He was the one who had given the order to bomb Academy. Stood up slowly. His hands had stopped shaking. Something cold had settled in his chest. Not anger, something deeper, something older. The same thing his ancestors had felt when they took those 47 children. He walked to his window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Admiral was commanding the 7th Human Fleet. She was a woman of few words and many victories. They called her the Silent Storm because she never raised her voice, not even when she was destroying an enemy fleet. She would already know about new. She would already be preparing. Somewhere else, a young man named Lee was receiving the worst news of his life. His twin daughters had been students at Academy. Did not know yet if they were among the dead or the wounded. He did not know that would soon abandon his quiet life as an engineer and pick up a weapon for the first time in his life. But knew one thing with perfect certainty. The Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. They had looked at humanity's smiles and handshakes and peaceful words, and they had forgotten what lay beneath. They had forgotten the rule. His communication device buzzed. It was a summons to the council chamber. The other representatives wanted to discuss what they called the new situation. They probably expected him to protest, to file complaints, to ask for negotiations. Put on his formal jacket and walked to the door. He did not hurry. There was no need to hurry. What was coming could not be stopped by running. The council chamber was a massive room shaped like a bowl. Hundreds of seats rose up in circles, each one holding a representative from a different species. At the center was a speaking platform where anyone could address the council. Walked down to this platform while hundreds of alien eyes watched him. He saw sitting in the section. The alien was huge, with gray skin like stone and 4 arms crossed over his chest. He was smiling. He thought he had won. He thought humanity would complain and cry and eventually accept its new place in the galaxy. Reached the platform and turned to face the council. The room fell silent. Every translator device was active. Every ear and antenna and sensory organ was focused on the human ambassador. Spoke in a calm, quiet voice. 300 years ago, humanity joined this council. We came with open hands. We came with hope for peace and cooperation. We built friendships. We signed treaties. We believed that the galaxy could be a place where all species worked together. He paused and looked directly at. Yesterday you attacked our colony. You destroyed our cities. You killed our children. 847 children who will never grow up, who will never fall in love, who will never have children of their own. The silence in the chamber was so complete that could hear his own heartbeat. You have made a mistake that cannot be undone. You have forgotten what we are. You have forgotten what we do when someone hurts our children. Laughed, it was a harsh, grinding sound. And what will you do, human? Send angry letters, demand meetings. Your species talks and talks, but you have grown soft. You have forgotten how to fight. Did not smile. He did not raise his voice. He simply looked at the way a man looks at an insect he is about to step on. You have 7 standard days to surrender yourself and all officers who participated in this attack. You will accept full responsibility. You will face human justice. And if we refuse, asked still smiling, turned to address the entire council. His voice carried to every corner of the massive room. Then pray to whatever gods you worship. We are coming, and we will not stop until we have burned everything you love to ash. He walked out of the chamber without looking back. Behind him, the silence stretched on and on. Some representatives were already reaching for their communication devices, sending warnings to their. The rule had been broken, and now the galaxy would remember why that rule existed in the first place. Lee received the call while he was eating breakfast. He was sitting in his small apartment on Earth, in a city called, drinking coffee and reading the morning news. His wife had died 3 years ago from a sickness that even the best doctors could not cure. After her death, he had sent his twin daughters to live with his sister on New. He thought they would be safer there. He thought the quiet colony world would be a good place for them to heal and grow. He was wrong. The call came from his sister. Her face on the screen was covered in dust and blood. Behind her could see smoke and fire and people running. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. "The school," she said. "They bombed the school." Dropped his coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but he did not hear it. He did not hear anything except his sister's words. "And are they alive? Tell me they are alive." His sister nodded, but her tears did not stop. "They are alive, but they are hurt, cannot walk. The doctors do not know if she will ever walk again, lost her left eye. They were in the library when the bombs fell. The building collapsed on top of them." Sat very still. He felt something break inside him, not his heart, something deeper, something that had been holding him together since his wife died. He looked at his hands. They were steady. They should have been shaking, but they were steady. "I am coming," he said. "Tell them their father is coming." He ended the call and stood up. He walked to his closet and pulled out an old box from the back. Inside was his military uniform. He had served in the Human Defense Force for 10 years before becoming an engineer. He had hoped he would never need to wear this uniform again. He was wrong about that too. The next 3 days were the strangest in galactic history. Every human ship everywhere in the galaxy went silent. Merchant vessels stopped trading. Cargo ships stopped delivering. Passenger ships stopped flying. Every human returned to human space, and then everything went quiet. The Galactic Council watched this with confusion. Some thought humanity was afraid. Some thought they were preparing to surrender. Laughed and told everyone that humans were cowards who would soon come begging for peace. Admiral knew better. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, the HSS Retribution, and watched her fleet grow. Ships arrived every hour from every corner of human space. Battleships and cruisers and destroyers. Carriers loaded with fighter craft. Support vessels carrying supplies and weapons. Medical ships ready to treat the wounded. By the end of the 3rd day, she had 4,000 warships under her command. It was the largest human fleet ever assembled, and it was still growing. Captain stood beside her, watching the same view. He was a young officer with sharp eyes and a calm voice. He had served under for 5 years and had never seen her this focused. "Admiral," he said, "the Council fleet has 50,000 ships. Even with our full strength, we will be outnumbered." Did not look at him. She kept her eyes on the stars. "Numbers are not everything. The Council thinks they know what we can do. They have seen our trade ships and our diplomatic vessels. They have seen our smiles and our handshakes. They think we are soft." She finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were cold and hard like black ice. "They do not know what we have been hiding." On Earth, in a building with no windows and no name, Dr. Park was presenting a plan to the highest leaders of humanity. She was a small woman with glasses and gray hair, but her mind was sharper than any blade. She had spent 30 years preparing for a day she hoped would never come. That day had come. "Operation Homecoming," she said, pointing to a holographic map of the galaxy. "We have 3 objectives. First, destroy the Council's military capacity so completely that they can never threaten us again. Second, capture everyone responsible for the attack on Nu. Third, create a memory so terrible that no species will ever think about attacking our children again." One of the generals raised his hand. "Doctor, the Council has more ships, more soldiers, more resources. How do we win this war?" Smiled. It was not a kind smile. "General, for 300 years we have shared our technology with the galaxy. We gave them medical advances. We gave them farming techniques. We gave them entertainment and art and music. But we never gave them our weapons. We never showed them what we could really do." She pressed a button, and the holographic display changed. It showed designs for ships and weapons that no one outside this room had ever seen. "We have been preparing for this possibility since the day we first met alien life. We hoped it would never happen. We prayed it would never happen. But we knew that someday, someone might be stupid enough to hurt our children. And we wanted to be ready. On the fourth day, humanity broke its silence. A single message was broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. It was sent in every known language to every inhabited planet, every space station, every ship. The message was short. The Galactic Council has 7 standard days to surrender, and all parties responsible for the attack on Nu. Failure to comply will be considered an act of war against humanity. There will be no negotiations. There will be no extensions. There will be no mercy. The message ended with a simple image. 847 small lights arranged in a circle, one light for each child who died. The galaxy reacted with disbelief. Many species thought humanity was bluffing. The Council fleet outnumbered them 10 to 1. What could humans possibly do against such odds? Called an emergency session of the Council. He stood at the speaking platform where had delivered his warning just days before. "My fellow Council members," he said, "the humans are making empty threats. They know they cannot defeat us. They are hoping we will be frightened by their words and surrender without a fight. I say we show them that the galaxy does not bow to the demands of one small species." Many representatives nodded in agreement. They were strong allies. Their fleet was the backbone of the Council's military. If said they could win, then they would win. But some representatives were not so sure. A species known for their long memories They remembered what happened when someone touched human children. Their representative tried to speak, tried to warn the Council, but shouted him down. "They were weak," declared. "They were unprepared. We are neither. We have the largest fleet in galactic history. We have the support of 12 major species. We have weapons the humans have never seen. They think they can frighten us with words. Let them come. We will crush them like insects." The Council voted to reject humanity's ultimatum. The vote was not even close. Far away on a medical ship flying toward Nu, Lee held his daughter's hands, was sleeping. Her legs were wrapped in healing bandages that glowed with soft blue light. The doctors said she might walk again someday, but it would take years of treatment. Was awake. Her left eye was gone, replaced by a temporary patch until she could receive an artificial one. Daddy whispered, "Are you going to fight?" Looked at his daughter's face, at the bandage covering where her eye used to be, at the small cuts and bruises that covered her skin. She was only 12 years old. She should have been worried about homework and friends and games. Instead, she was lying in a hospital bed, asking her father if he was going to war. "Yes," he said, "I am going to fight." "Will you come back?" Squeezed her hand gently. "I will come back, I promise. And when I come back, no one will ever hurt you again. No one in the entire galaxy will ever think about hurting you again." Closed her eye and fell asleep. Stayed by her side for a long time, watching her breathe. Then he stood up and walked to the door. In the hallway, a military officer was waiting for him. "Mr. Lee," the officer said, "your application has been accepted. You have been assigned to the engineering corps of the 7th Fleet. Admiral has personally requested that survivors' family members be given the chance to serve." Nodded. He did not smile. He did not speak. He simply followed the officer to begin his training. The 7th day arrived. The deadline passed. The Council did not surrender. On the bridge of the HSS Retribution, Admiral received the news with no visible emotion. She turned to Captain. "Signal the fleet," she said. "We move in 1 hour." Hesitated. "Admiral, are we really prepared to fight the entire galaxy?" Looked at him. For just a moment something flickered in her cold eyes, something that might have been sadness, or might have been regret. "We are not going to fight them," she said. "We are going to break them. And when we are done, no one will ever forget what happens when you hurt human children." She turned back to the stars. "Give the order. Operation Homecoming begins now." The gate was a place where space itself bent like a river around a stone. Ships could enter the gate from one side of the galaxy and exit on the other side in minutes instead of months. It was the most important strategic point in known space. Whoever controlled the gate controlled the fastest path between human territory and the rest of the galaxy. The Council knew this. They had placed 15,000 ships at the gate, forming a wall of metal and weapons that stretched across the darkness. Battleships floated at the center, their massive cannons pointed toward human space. Smaller cruisers from a dozen other species surrounded them like wolves around their leader. Fighter craft patrolled the empty spaces between the larger ships, ready to swarm any enemy that approached. Admiral, the commander, stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled. His ship, the Crushing Fist, was the largest warship in the Council fleet. It had destroyed whole planets in previous wars. He had personally killed thousands of enemies in his long career. He was not afraid of humans. "They will come through the gate," he told his officers. "And when they do, we will surround them and destroy them. They have 4,000 ships. We have 15,000. This will not be a battle. It will be an execution." His officers agreed. They had studied human military tactics for years. Humans were creative, yes. They were determined, yes. But they could not overcome such overwhelming numbers. Mathematics did not lie. The first human ships appeared on their sensors at midday. Leaned forward in his chair, eager to see his enemy die. But something was wrong. The human ships were not coming through the gate. They were appearing from everywhere at once, from behind asteroids, from inside dust clouds, from places where no ship should be able to hide. They had been there for days, waiting, invisible to every sensor the Council had. "How is this possible?" shouted. "Our sensors showed nothing." Before anyone could answer, the human ships attacked. The first wave of weapons was nothing the Council had ever seen. Beams of light that did not burn or cut but simply turned off every electronic system they touched. Across the Council fleet, ships went dark. Lights failed. Weapons stopped working. Engines died. Thousands of vessels became floating coffins, their crews trapped inside with no power and no way to call for help. Watched in horror as half his fleet died, without a single shot being fired. "What are these weapons?" he screamed. "What is happening?" The answer came from the darkness. Human ships, sleek and fast, cut through the disabled fleet like sharks through still water. They did not waste ammunition on the dead ships. They focused on the vessels that could still fight. On the HSS Retribution, Admiral watched the battle unfold on her tactical display. Each human ship was a small blue dot. Each Council ship was a red dot. The red dots were disappearing very quickly. "Ghost Protocol is working perfectly," Captain reported. "Their command structure is collapsing. They cannot coordinate their defense." Nodded. Ghost Protocol was a form of electronic warfare that humanity had developed in secret. It did not just jam enemy communications. It fed false information into their systems, making them see threats that did not exist and miss threats that did. Council ships were firing at empty space while human vessels attacked them from behind. "Focus on their command ships," ordered. "Cut off the head and the body will die." Across the battlefield, human strike teams targeted flagships with surgical precision. They did not try to destroy these massive vessels. Instead, they used small, fast drones that attached to the ship's hulls and drilled through to the command centers. Inside, specially trained soldiers fought their way to the bridges and captured the commanding officers. Admiral was one of the last to fall. He fought bravely, using all four of his arms to swing a heavy blade at the humans who invaded his ship. But there were too many of them, and they moved too fast. A woman with short black hair and cold eyes shot the blade from his hand with a precise blast. "Admiral," she said, "you are now a prisoner of humanity. If you cooperate, you will be treated according to the laws of war. If you resist, you will be treated according to the laws of justice." Spat at her feet. "You think this victory means anything? The Council has 50,000 more ships. You have won a battle, not a war." The woman smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "We are not trying to win a war, Admiral. We are trying to teach a lesson." She nodded to her team, and they dragged away. The Battle of Gate lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Council had lost 11,000 ships. Some were destroyed. Some were captured. Some were simply floating dead in space, waiting to be collected. The human fleet had lost 340 vessels. Across the galaxy, species that had not joined the war watched the recordings in shocked silence. They had expected the humans to fight bravely and lose honorably. They had not expected this. This was not a battle. This was a demonstration. Lee was on one of the support vessels, helping repair damaged ships and treat wounded soldiers. He had not fired a weapon himself, but he had seen the battle through the ship's sensors. He had watched the Council fleet crumble like paper in rain. A young soldier sat beside him, hands shaking. The soldier was barely 20 years old and had never seen combat before. "I thought we would lose," the soldier whispered. "Everyone said they had more ships. Everyone said we could not win." Looked at the young man. He thought about his daughters in the hospital. He thought about the 847 children who would never grow up. "We do not fight to win," said quietly. "We fight to protect. And when we are protecting our children, we do not count ships. We do not measure strength. We simply do whatever is necessary." The soldier nodded slowly but could see he did not fully understand. That was okay. He was young. Someday, when he had children of his own, he would understand. On the Council of Prime received the news of the defeat with disbelief. He had been so certain of victory. He had told everyone that humans were soft. He had promised an easy triumph. Now his fleet was broken, and the humans were coming. How, he demanded of his advisors. How did they do this? Where did these weapons come from? Why did we not know about this? His chief advisor, a smaller named, shook his head. "It appears the humans have been hiding their true capabilities for centuries. They showed us only what they wanted us to see. The weapons they use today, the tactics, the ships, we have never seen any of it before." Slammed his 4 fists on the table. "Impossible. We have spies in human space. We have studied their military for years." "Our spies reported what the humans allowed them to see," said quietly. "We believed we knew them. We were wrong." Stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the city of Prime stretched to the horizon. Millions have lived their lives below, unaware of the disaster unfolding above. "What do we do now?" asked, and for the first time there was fear in his voice. "We can try to negotiate," suggested. "Perhaps if we offer to surrender you and the other officers responsible for the attack, they will accept peace." Spun around. "Surrender me? You want me to give myself to the humans?" "I want our people to survive," replied. "The humans are not stopping. They are already moving toward our second fleet at the Remnant. If they defeat that fleet too, nothing will stand between them and Prime." Was silent for a long moment, then he shook his head. "No, we still have more ships. We still have more soldiers. We will call in every favor, every ally, every debt. The humans cannot defeat the entire galaxy." Bowed his head. He knew it was useless to argue, was too proud to admit defeat, too proud to surrender, too proud to save his own people. And so the war continued. Ambassador watched the reports from Gate on a small screen in his office. He felt no joy at the victory. He felt only tired sadness and cold determination. His communication device buzzed. It was a message from the representative, one of the few council members who had voted against the attack on Nu. "Ambassador," the message said, "please, there must be a way to end this without more death. Many of us did not want this war. Many of us warned against attacking your children. Can we not find peace?" Typed a reply with heavy fingers. "Peace was possible 7 days ago. Your council chose war. Now there can only be justice. The humans who died cannot come back. The children who died cannot come back. Surrender and his allies. Accept responsibility. Then we will talk about peace. Until then, we will keep coming." He sent the message and turned off his screen. Outside his window, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, Admiral was already planning the next battle. Somewhere out there, Lee was loading supplies onto ships that would carry more soldiers into combat. Somewhere out there, 847 families were still crying for children who would never come home. The lesson was not finished yet, but it would be. Soon, the entire galaxy would remember why they should never hurt human children. And they would never, ever forget again. Prime was beautiful. The planet had 3 moons that filled its night sky with silver light. Its oceans were purple, colored by ancient minerals that sparkled like jewels. Its cities were built from white stone that glowed gold at sunset. For 10,000 years, the people had called this world home. Now, human warships hung in the space above it like dark clouds before a storm. Admiral stood on the bridge of the HSS Retribution and looked down at the planet below. Around her, the human fleet had spread out in a perfect formation. Behind them were the broken remains of 2 more Council fleets. The second battle at the Remnant had been even more one-sided than Gate. The third battle at the Approach had lasted only 4 hours. The Council's military power was shattered. Their greatest admirals were prisoners. Their mightiest ships were debris fields floating in the void. Only one more obstacle remained between humanity and victory. That obstacle was the home fleet of Prime. 12,000 ships, crewed by soldiers who were fighting for their families, their homes, their world. They still outnumbered the human fleet by 3-1. But numbers did not matter anymore. Everyone knew it. The watching galaxy knew it. Even, hiding somewhere in the planet below, knew it. Captain walked up beside. His face was tired. They had all been fighting for weeks without rest. "Admiral, they are not moving. They are just waiting." Nodded. "They know they cannot win. They are hopping. We will accept their surrender. They think if they do not attack us, we will show them mercy." "Will we?" Was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to her communications officer. "Open a channel. Broadcast to every ship in this system, every station, every receiver on the planet below. I want every living being in this system to hear what I am about to say." The officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Stepped forward. Her voice was calm and clear. "People of Prime, soldiers of the Council fleet, my name is Admiral of the Human Defense Force. I am here because your leaders attacked our children. 847 children died on New. 1,156 were wounded. This was not an accident. This was not a mistake. You ordered this attack deliberately. He wanted to teach humanity a lesson." She paused. Behind her, every human in the fleet was listening. "Instead, we are here to teach you a lesson. But before we fight, I want you to understand why we fight. I want you to understand what you took from us." She nodded to her communications officer. A new broadcast began. It was simple, just names. 847 names read one by one, slowly and clearly. With each name came a small holographic image of a child's face. Age 7, he wanted to be a pilot. Park, age 10, she loved to paint pictures of flowers. Lee, age 12, he was learning to play the guitar. The broadcast went on for 4 hours. No one interrupted it. On every ship, on every station on the planet below, people watched and listened. Some cried, some looked away, some could not move. Lee stood in the cargo bay of a supply ship, watching the broadcast on a small screen. When his daughter's classmates appeared, children who had played in his home, children whose laughter he remembered, he felt tears run down his face. But he did not look away. He owed them that much. When the broadcast ended, Admiral spoke again. "These are the children you killed. Remember their faces. Remember their names. Now I will give you one final chance. Surrender and all officers who participated in the attack on Nu, accept human oversight of your military for 50 years. Do this and the killing stops today. You have 1 hour. The channel closed. Silence filled the space between the fleets. On Prime, chaos erupted. The civilian population had watched the broadcast. They had seen the children's faces. Many of them had children of their own. Many of them had not supported the war. Many of them were terrified of what the humans would do if their leaders did not surrender. Crowds filled the streets. They marched toward the government buildings, demanding that be given to the humans. Security forces tried to stop them, but there were too many. The anger of mothers and fathers who understood what had been done in their name was stronger than any weapon. Watched from his window as the crowds grew, his 4 hands trembled. This was not how it was supposed to happen. Humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to surrender. They were not supposed to destroy everything he had built. His advisor burst into the room. The fleet commanders are requesting permission to surrender. The home fleet refuses to fight. The soldiers are saying they will not die for a war they did not choose. Turned on him with rage in his eyes. Cowards, all of them. We can still win. We just need to fight harder. Shook his head sadly. No, we cannot win. We never could. The humans were always stronger than we knew. They just chose not to show us until now. Before could respond, the door crashed open. Soldiers poured into the room, but they were not there to protect him. They grabbed him with rough hands and forced him to his knees. What is the meaning of this? Screamed. I am I command you. The lead soldier looked down at him with disgust. You commanded the death of children. You brought this war upon us. Now you will face the consequences. They dragged out of his palace, through the streets filled with angry crowds, and delivered him to a human shuttle that had landed in the central square. Lee was one of the soldiers waiting at the shuttle. When was brought before him, the alien looked up with fearful eyes. Please, said, I was trying to protect my people. Humanity was growing too powerful. We had to act. Looked at him for a long moment. He thought about his daughters in the hospital. He thought about who might never walk again. He thought about who would see the world through only one eye for the rest of her life. He wanted to hurt this creature. He wanted to make it suffer the way his daughters had suffered. The anger inside him was so hot it felt like fire. But he did not act on that anger. Instead, he simply said, you will face trial. Human justice will decide your fate. I am just here to make sure you get there. He turned away and let the other soldiers load onto the shuttle. Above the planet, Admiral received word that the surrender was complete. The home fleet was standing down. The council leadership was in custody. The war was over. Captain let out a breath he did not know he was holding. We did it, Admiral. We won. Shook her head slowly. There is no victory here, only justice. 847 children are still dead. Nothing we do will bring them back. She looked down at the beautiful planet below. So many people lived there. So many families. So many children who would grow up knowing that their leaders had made a terrible mistake. Order the fleet to maintain position, she said. No one fires unless fired upon. We are not conquerors. We are not here to destroy. We are here to make sure this never happens again. On a communication screen, Ambassador appeared. He was on a shuttle descending toward Prime to begin formal surrender negotiations. Admiral said, I wanted to thank you and to tell you something. Waited. Asked me why humans react so extremely when our children are harmed. I did not have a good answer for him then, but watching what you and your fleet accomplished, I think I understand now. What did you tell him? Asked. His face was tired but peaceful. I told him that our children are not just our future. They are the only thing in this universe we will burn everything else to protect, and now the galaxy knows it. Nodded slowly. Outside her window, the stars were beginning to fade as Prime's sun rose over the horizon. A new day was beginning, a new chapter in galactic history. The war was over, but the memory would last forever. 3 years had passed since the war ended. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was different now. Human observers sat in every military meeting. Human advisors reviewed every major decision. A new law had been carved into the walls of the council chamber in letters taller than a man. The law was written in every known language, so that no species could claim they did not understand it. The children of any species are sacred. To harm them is to invite annihilation. This was no longer an unspoken rule. It was the first and most important law of galactic civilization. On Nu, the rebuilding was almost complete. The cities that had been destroyed were now new and clean. The farms that had been burned were green again. Life had returned to the colony world. But in the place where Academy once stood, there was no new building. Instead, there was a memorial, a circular garden filled with flowers from 100 different worlds, and rising from the center of that garden were 847 pillars of light, one for each child who had died. At night, those pillars shone up into the sky like a message to the stars. "We remember you. We will always remember you." Lee stood at the edge of the memorial, watching his daughters play among the flowers, was walking now. It had taken 2 years of treatment and countless hours of therapy, but she could run and jump almost like before. Had received an artificial eye that worked even better than her natural one. She said she could see colors now that no one else could see. They were laughing. After everything they had been through, they could still laugh. Felt tears in his eyes, but they were happy tears. A woman walked up beside him. It was Dr. Park, the strategist who had planned Operation Homecoming. After the war, she had written a book about everything that happened. The book was called The Cost of Cruelty. It was required reading in schools across the galaxy now. "They look happy," said, watching the girls play. Nodded, "They are strong, stronger than I ever was." "You served well during the war. Admiral spoke highly of you." Shrugged, "I did what any father would do. I just wanted to protect them." Smiled, "That is what the whole war was about. Not revenge, not conquest, just parents protecting their children. I think that is why we won. The council fought for power, we fought for love. Love is always stronger." Thought about her words. He thought about the long nights on military ships, surrounded by soldiers who all had their own children, their own families, their own reasons to fight. They had not been an army of warriors. They had been an army of parents. Across the galaxy, on 100 different worlds, species were learning the same lesson. In schools, children studied the war and learned why their ancestors had been wrong to attack Nu. In temples, priests prayed for forgiveness and understanding. Even the scattered survivors of the ancient taught their children about the humans who had destroyed their empire 200 years ago. The lesson was always the same. Humans are not the strongest. They are not but they love their children with a fire that can burn worlds. Do not give them a reason to unleash that fire. Admiral had retired from active command. She lived quietly now on a small island on Earth, far from the crowds and the fame that the war had brought her. But once a month, she traveled to a military academy to teach young officers about leadership and responsibility. Today, she stood before a classroom of cadets from a dozen different species. Humans sat beside, shared desks with races that had once been enemies. The war had broken old barriers. Now everyone wanted to learn from the humans who had changed the galaxy. "The most important lesson I can teach you," said, "is not about weapons or tactics or strategy. It is about why we fight." A young cadet raised his hand. "Admiral, my grandfather says you humans fight because you are naturally violent. He says you hide it behind smiles, but inside you are killers." Looked at the cadet with gentle eyes. "Your grandfather is partly right. We can be violent. We can be killers, but we do not want to be. We spent centuries on our fighting each other. We grew tired of war. When we reached the stars, we hoped we had left that violence behind." She walked to the window and looked out at the sky. "But we learned something important. Peace is not the absence of strength. Peace is choosing not to use your strength. We kept our weapons hidden because we hoped we would never need them. When the council attacked our children, we had to make a choice. We could have forgiven. We could have negotiated. We could have accepted our place as a weaker species." She turned back to face the class. "Instead, we chose to show the galaxy what we really are. Not because we wanted to, because we had to. Because our children were dying and no parent can stand by while their children die." The classroom was silent. Every student was thinking about what she said. "When you become officers," continued, "you will have power over life and death. You will make decisions that affect millions of people. Remember this lesson. The species that seems weakest may be the strongest. The people who smile the most may hide the greatest weapons. And the worst enemy you can ever make is a parent protecting their child." Captain commanded the 7th Fleet now. He had grown into his role, becoming the kind of leader that soldiers would follow into any battle. But he never forgot where he came from or who had taught him. Once a year he visited on her island. They would sit on her porch, drinking tea and watching the sunset, talking about old times and new challenges. "They want to join our defense alliance," reported during his latest visit. "They are asking to send officers to our academies. Even species we never met before are reaching out, asking to learn from us." Sipped her tea. "We showed them power. Now we must show them wisdom. Ruling through fear is not enough. We must help them understand why we fight, not just how." Nodded. "The children born since the war, both human and alien, they are growing up in a different galaxy. They do not remember what it was like before. They only know the peace that came after." "That is good," said. "That is what we fought for, not glory, not revenge. Just a galaxy where children can grow up in peace." On a distant world, an old grandmother sat with her grandchild under a tree with silver leaves. The child was curious, full of questions about everything. "Grandmother," the child asked, "why does everyone talk about the humans? Why are there so many rules about not hurting their children?" The grandmother looked at her grandchild with serious eyes. She remembered the war. She remembered the fear. She remembered watching human warships fill the sky above Prime like an ocean of metal and fire. "Little one," she said, "let me tell you a story. Long ago, our leaders made a terrible mistake. They hurt human children because they thought humans were weak. They thought humans would accept it and do nothing." The child listened carefully. "They were wrong. Humans love their children the way stars love their planets, completely, eternally, and with enough fire to burn anyone who threatens them." The grandmother pulled her grandchild close. "The rule exists because the humans taught us a lesson we should have already known. Children are sacred, all children everywhere. When we forgot that, we lost almost everything. Now we remember, now we protect." The child thought about this. Then she asked, "Are humans scary?" The grandmother smiled. "Not if you are kind to them. Be their friend and they will be the best friends you ever have. But never ever hurt their children. Never even think about it." Far across the galaxy, on a rebuilt new, the sun was setting. The pillars of light in the memorial garden began to glow brighter as the sky grew dark. Families gathered to remember the children who had died. Lee stood with his daughters, watching the lights rise into the sky, and held his hands, their faces peaceful. "Daddy," said, "do you think they can see us, the children who died?" Looked up at the light stretching toward the stars. "I think so," he said. "I think they know that we remember them. And I think they know that because of them, the galaxy became a safer place for all children." Squeezed his hand. "I am glad you came home. You promised you would, and you did." Smiled and pulled both daughters close. "I will always come home to you, always." Above them, a human patrol ship passed silently through the darkening sky. It was watching, protecting. making sure that no one would ever forget the lesson written in light on the surface of Nu. The first rule of the galaxy was clear now. It would never be broken again. Do not attack the human children. Because humans protect what they love. And when they love with the fire of 1,000 suns. And fire, once unleashed, burns everything in its path.